All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the AIA Contract Documents online service webinar on best practices when you're in there and using the online service. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to begin just by introducing myself. My name is Sarah. I work with the AIA training in the online service. We're also going to be joined a little later by Ariel Enriquez. He is the director of the Contract Documents Technical Support Team. He is going to be on the air to answer any questions that you guys have today. So here is what we have in store for the next hour or so that we have set aside for the webinar. So I'm going to start with just a quick review of the online service. It is likely that we have a wide range in the audience here. Some of you may have only been in the online service a few times, maybe even less than that. Some of you may be quite experienced in the online service and are here to get a few extra tips. We're just going to spend some time just reviewing the basic navigation and workflow of the online service just to get everyone on the same page here. Then I'll go through some best practice tips, and those are going to be interweaved with some live demonstration. So I'll present a tip or a concept, and then for some of those tips, I'll jump into the online service and actually do a live demonstration just to carry out some of those functions and demonstrate what I'm actually talking about. So we'll see some example material here. And then we should have about 20 minutes at the end to pick Ariel's brain and have some Q&A. We'll be collecting audience questions through that questions box in GoToWebinar. So anytime throughout the presentation, if you have a question or if there's something you would like to see again in the live demonstration, go ahead and type that into your questions box. We'll collect all of those at the end for me to read to Ariel, and he will give you some answers on air. Everyone who's attending today will receive a follow-up email from me that's going to include a recording of the presentation, so you'll have that for reference. It's also going to include a feedback survey. If there's anything you'd like to see covered beyond what we go over today, or if you'd like to leave any other feedback, we certainly welcome that. The slides will also be available as part of that follow-up email. So just keep an eye out for an email from AIA Contract Documents referring to today's webinar, and you will have all of that by close of business tomorrow. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started as promised with our quick review here. Again, this is just to go over the basics of how the online service works and how it's laid out, just to get us all on the same page, maybe give you a little refresher if it's been a while since you've been in the online service. I'm going to go ahead and get started with what we call the life cycle of a document. This is essentially a visualization of how a document moves from draft to final in the online service, and it just gives you a little bit of context, a little bit of groundwork on the workflow. So when you go to the online service to create a document, you're going to start by choosing that AIA template. A template is essentially a starting point for your contract language. Whatever template you'd like to use, you're going to create a document draft using that template. If you're using a template that is a G series form, so if it's an administrative form, by default, drafts for those forms are going to open in the online editor, where you make your edits directly in the online service and you finalize from there. Otherwise, most of our other templates, so if you select any other template that is an agreement, by default, that draft is going to generate as a Word document on your computer. So it will download as a Microsoft Word document. You'll make your changes offline in Microsoft Word. And then once you're ready to go ahead and make a final out of that draft, you'll import it back into the online service so that you can finalize. Your finalized documents are going to be locked PDFs. If you're finalizing an agreement, it's going to be variance checked, which means that your changes from that standard AIA template, any edits to that legal language, are going to somehow be marked in your final. If you choose a clean variance check when you finalize, your changes are going to be marked all the way at the end in an additions and deletions report. If you choose a comparative variance check when you go to finalize, those changes will be marked throughout the document. So now that we've gotten some groundwork on navigation, on workflow, excuse me, we're going to go ahead and now move on to navigation. So when you first log into the online service, this is what you're going to see. We have your home tab here. The online service is organized by these tabs up at the top here, mainly home, projects, template library, and contacts. I'm briefly going to touch on each of these tabs just so you know what they look like and what they're there for. Home tab, pretty standard, going to have your recent activity and some helpful getting started links. Your projects tab is where you're going to spend a lot of your time in the online service, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about the projects tab today. So for now, we're just talking about navigation, so we'll revisit this later, but just for now, know that the Projects tab is where you can create a new project. Once you create a project, it's going to show up on this list over here on the left. It's also going to be where you add your project team, and we're going to be going over what a project team is and why you should be adding your project team from the Projects tab. But for now, know that that's where that button is. And it's also where you're going to be creating your document drafts, as you see in the red there, and also importing any files, as you see is that dark gray button on the left. And remember that you import a file, you can import an offline document draft to finalize. That will be the main purpose of that button. Next, looking at the template library, this houses all of our standard AIA templates. There are several different tools in the template library that you can use to browse around these templates, to preview them, to access instructions. All of our templates that are currently available are stored in this library, so you can use it for that. You can also use the template library to create a custom template, which we're going to be going over a little later. That is one of our best practice tips. I'm going to go over exactly how you can create a custom template from the template library. And then you have your contacts tab here. When you're working in the online service, your contacts are the parties to your agreement, and it houses their information. Your contacts tab is going to contain a master list of all of your contacts, so any parties to any agreements that you've worked on during your time in the online service, they're not necessarily organized by project here. And then at the very end, you see your help tab. We're going to revisit that at the end here. And then up at the top right, you're going to see your name. If you are an administrator for your company's multi-user account, you're going to see that company settings button above your name. If you don't see the company settings button, don't worry about it. It just means you're not an administrator for your company's account. You will, however, see the My Settings button all the way at the top there. So that is going to wrap up our quick and dirty review of the online service. If you feel like you want to take a step back and cover some more basic materials in depth, I'm going to show you exactly where you can go for a basics training in which we take an hour to just go over that basic navigation and workflow in a little bit more detail. But in the meantime, we're going to spend today going through some best practice tips with the assumption that we have a general knowledge of the online service. So let's go ahead and get started with that. My first best practice tip for you is to create drafts from the Projects tab. So we're going to be revisiting this concept in just a little bit, but when you use this Create Document button in the Projects tab to create any new document drafts you want, that is a great way to get your project details and your party's information to auto-populate into your draft documents. This can keep things organized, can streamline, save you some time. So we're going to show you exactly how that works in just a little bit. But when you're creating your drafts from the Projects tab, that method works best when you have assigned your project team. So you saw me reference both of these buttons earlier when we were talking about navigation. Your project team is going to be whichever contacts, so whichever parties you have in your contact library that are associated with that project are going to be added in your project team, and that's going to be in your Projects tab. So let me go ahead now and jump into the online service here to start with some of our live demos, and I'm going to show you exactly what I am talking about here. So I'm in the online service. As you can see, I am in my projects tab. When you create a new project, when I click create new project, you're going to see that you're going to be asked a series of details. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Falls Road project as our example here. You see I have my details completely filled in here. I have my description, my location. If I ever need to edit this, I certainly can using the Edit Project Data button. But it's a best practice to have these fields filled out accurately and completely, because eventually we're going to see that when you create your drafts from the Projects tab, this information here is going to auto-populate where appropriate in any drafts you create for this project. So again, you're keeping things consistent and streamlined by keeping your project details filled out. Now, the second thing we went over is, again, the project team. So that is going to be right here, in this button kind of in the middle here. When I click on the project team, this is going to bring me to a window that allows me to assign different contacts to my project. So you see here, I already have my prime parties added. I have a contractor, owner, and architect. When you click Add Team Member, that's going to bring up a subset of your contact library. So here's where you want to check off any parties to any agreements that are going to be created for this project. So great place to start is at least adding yourself as a contact and then adding yourself to the project team. If you don't have someone created as a contact yet, no problem, just press Create Contact. This information that you see here, these fields, are also going to be populated into any document drafts that you create for this project. So again, it's a best practice to create contacts for your parties to your agreements and make sure all of these fields are filled out when applicable and accurately. So I have my project team all assigned here. So when I go back to all projects, I'm in the best place to start a new document draft by clicking this Create Document button down at the bottom here from the Projects tab after I've completed all of my project details and added my project team. Now we're going to see this concept in action a little bit later here, but before we create a document draft, I want to jump back to the presentation and give you a few tips on editing in draft documents. So we went over project team. The first editing tip I'm going to give you is to keep the chevrons when you're working in offline document drafts. So this is referring to any time you have a contract document draft in Microsoft Word. The first page is going to have a series of boxes that house the information to your party. So in this particular screenshot, you have the owner, and then below you have the owner's information for the parties. You're always going to see these little chevron characters here that surround your details. It is a very good idea. In fact, we highly recommend not deleting those chevrons. They incorporate some kind of coding that helps format the document when you go to finalize. You're welcome to edit any of this information or add information within the chevrons, but don't delete the chevrons and don't work outside of the chevrons when you're in these gray boxes. If you're familiar with the online service or you finalized a document before, you probably know that what this looks like as a draft is going to end up looking like this in a final. It's going to automatically take away those chevrons. The software is going to do that for you. It's going to take away those gray boxes. It will look nice and pretty. Just leave those in draft form. The next tip I'm going to give you when you're editing a draft document in Microsoft Word is keeping the italicized instructions. So as you work your way, as you're filling out an agreement, you're going to see a series of italicized instructions just like this. And these are going to show up anytime you have to manually fill something out in the contract. It's common practice. In fact, it's recommended that you go ahead and leave those italicized instructions in place. If you go through and delete all of the italicized instructions, it could cause confusion and formatting trouble down the road. So we highly recommend that you go ahead and leave those italicized instructions in place. So those are your two main tips that I'm going to give you in terms of editing document drafts. So we talked about creating document drafts, we talked about editing document drafts. Now I'm going to take a second to talk about templates because of course you may know that you have to select a template to create a draft. And I mentioned earlier that there is a way in the online service to build your own custom template library. So chances are when you're working in the online service, you have a series of templates that you use throughout different projects. You're not using different templates every time you create a new project. So if you have templates that every time you download them, no matter what the project, you have automatic language that you add or take away. It may be company approved language, it may be personal preferences, but you may save yourself some time by creating one or more custom versions of our templates. So I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that in the online service and then create drafts using these custom templates. So let's go ahead and jump back into the online service here. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to customize a template, a great place to start is the Template Library tab up at the top here. So I have all of my custom templates here. Let's say, for example, just to pick a short document here, we use this A105 repeatedly. I use it throughout many of my different projects, but every time I use this document, I have the same text that I add, no matter the project, or I have the same edits that I make. And I would save myself some time by just creating my own custom version of this A105 here that I can use so that my changes are automatically incorporated every time. So to create a custom template for offline editing, I'm going to start by clicking on the template name from the template library. That is going to download a blank template in Microsoft Word onto my computer. You can probably find it in your Downloads tab or your Downloads folder. It might automatically open. It just depends on your computer settings. But it will be downloaded onto your computer, and it's going to look like this. So this is what a draft looks like when you're working offline. Right now it's blank. We don't have any information in these boxes yet, and that's okay because remember, we're creating a custom template, not necessarily a specific document for a specific project. That'll come a little later. So I'm going to scroll down here and you can make any changes that you want to be part of your custom template right in Microsoft Word here. Now, remember, you don't want to add anything that's specific to a project. You want these to be general changes that you want to be part of your custom template. So I'm just going to add an example addition here. Any changes you make will be offline. This is just a Microsoft Word document. You're welcome to save it and return to it later on your computer. You can email it around, get additional input. Any changes you make will be offline and out of the online service until you are ready to upload it to your custom template library. So let's say I've gone through, I have all of the changes I want to make as part of my custom template. I'm going to make sure I have the most updated version saved on my computer. It doesn't matter where you save it, as long as you can find it later on. I'm going to label this so I can find it. And I'm going to return to the online service here. Now I'm still in my template library tab. I've downloaded, oops, there we go. I have downloaded my custom template. I've made changes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my custom template library. This is a sub-tab within the template library tab. So it's right up at the top here, right next to AIA templates, right there. This is going to house all of my custom templates. So I'm going to click Import Template over here on the right. And I'm going to pick that edited document from my computer and import it to my template library. Once you've imported it, you're just going to select it from your computer. Once you've imported it, that is saved to your online service account. You don't necessarily have to be using the computer you originally made this or saved this on. It's saved to your account. You can use it for creating future drafts you get into the online service. So I have my custom template. And again, this can be a whole library. You can make as many custom templates as you'd like. But let's say the time comes when I am ready to create a document draft using this template. I have a new project that I want to create an A105 for. I'm going to go ahead and go to my Projects tab, because remember, creating drafts from the Projects tab is a best practice in the online service. I'm going to press Create Document down at the bottom here. Remember, we're still on this Falls Road project that I've been talking about before. And I can find my custom template under the Custom subtab here. So when I click on that, that's going to generate a drafts document using this custom template, but associating it with my project details. So let's open it up and see exactly what I mean here. So you're going to see that it looks fairly similar to how it did before, except as promised, my project details have auto-populated into these gray boxes. This is why we create drafts from the Projects tab. So this is the owner that I created as a contact and added to my project team. I also have the contractor and the architect. Remember, I had those prime agreements as part of my project team. And these are also my project details. So this is why we recommend having a complete project details and complete project team, so that any drafts you create for future projects are going to auto-populate. Now, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. And remember, we used our custom template, so this sample added text here has just automatically been incorporated. So I can save myself some time by creating drafts from the Projects tab, and then just by setting myself up there, I've saved myself a lot of time when I've actually gone to create this document draft, because boom, my project details have auto-populated, and then any standard changes I've made for myself are automatically incorporated. Scrolling back up here, you notice the chevrons that I was referring to. And remember, you want to leave those chevrons there. So once we have our offline draft here, you'll make any edits again directly in Microsoft Word. You can go ahead and save it to your computer, revisit it, email it around. Again, you can do whatever you'd like with this Word document. Any changes you make will be outside of the online service. And then, as standard practice, if you would want to go and finalize that draft, you would use this Import File button here, this black button, or dark gray, I guess it is, to import that edited draft so that you can finalize. So that's just an overview and a reiteration of creating custom templates from the template library, and then creating drafts from the Projects tab. That includes complete project details and project team information. Any questions you have regarding any of those processes, go ahead and type those in and we'll save them for the end there. I'm also happy to revisit any of these processes and re-demonstrate for you. But also remember that you will be receiving a recording of the presentation today, so you'll have that for reference as well. So let's go ahead and hop back to our presentation here now that we've talked about customizing templates. The next big tip I'm going to give you, and a best practice in the online service, is combining documents. So because AIA Contract Documents, those finalized documents are going to be locked PDFs, you can sometimes run into trouble when you try to combine documents in other PDF softwares. So we have a PDF combination feature right in the online service, and that's called our Project Manual feature. This is going to allow you to combine finalized documents with each other, and you can also combine any additional PDFs you may have with finalized documents, whether you made them yourself or they're software generated. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into the online service already here and visit this Project Manual feature and see exactly how it works and when the best times to use it is, when it could be helpful for you. So again, we're back already. Let's go ahead and take a look at the documents we have in this Falls Road project. I've clicked View All Documents. It's going to take me to this document management window. Let's say that I want to give this G701, this change order, just as a complete example here. You see this finalized document. I want to give both this finalized change order and this finalized A101 to another party, but I'd rather it be combined into one PDF so that I don't have to email them several different PDFs. So eventually we're going to see, I'm going to go back to the Projects tab here, that when we click on this Project Manual button, that's going to take me to a window that has all of my PDFs for each of my projects over here on the left. So take a look at my Falls Road project. Right now, this includes all of the finalized documents I have for this project because, of course, they finalize in PDF form. But let's say I have my own PDF that I've made myself. It may be a cover page, it may be an attachment or an exhibit that you've made yourself, and you want to include that in the combined PDF. So I have an example here. Let me just bring this up. I just have this open in Adobe. It's just a PDF that I made just as an example. And let's say you want to include this as an attachment, and it goes to the end of the G701 change order. I'm going to go back to the online service here. I'm going to go to my Projects tab. And I'm going to import this PDF into my project. So that way, anything that I import in PDF form using this Import File button in black here, anything I import in PDF form is eligible to be included in my project manual. So I'm going to find that PDF on my computer. Again, this is a PDF I made myself. It does not have to be software generated. I'm going to import that. I'm going to import this to include into my Falls Road project. So the Import File button can be used for more than just importing document drafts to be finalized. So you see I've imported this attachment here. You see it showing up in my project documents at the top here. So with now this imported, let's go ahead and return back to our project manual window and actually create that combined PDF. Now that I have all of the PDFs I would like imported in my imported into my project. So I'm clicking Project Manual again here. You see now that guy is showing up on the left. So I'm going to select any PDFs I'd like to combine. And they're going to show up over here on the right. Now you can use these arrows all the way here to the right to go ahead and reorder in any order that you like. And then the order that's showing up here is going to be the order for which it combines the PDFs. You can rename it down here if you'd like. It's going to automatically create a name for you. And then once I press OK at the bottom here, I have all of my PDFs selected. They're in an order that I want. When I press OK, that is going to combine those PDFs and then save a download link to my computer, or to my project, excuse me. So that, you see it down here in my recent documents preview. When I click on that, it's going to download that combined PDF. So let's take a look. There we go, it's just taking a second. All right, so I have my software generated finalized documents combined with any PDFs I made myself. And then we have that A101 as well. So the project manual feature can be incredibly helpful for, again, let's say I wanted to create a cover page with all the documents that I knew I wanted to combine. I can create a cover page and put that in a project manual. You can use it to attach exhibits onto the end of documents, whether you made them yourself or they're software generated exhibits. You can use it to combine forms, like if you want to combine a payment application with its continuation sheet, you can do that. But just keep in mind, just as a general tip, when you're finalizing documents that you know you want to combine, you finalize them individually first. So then once you have all of your PDFs in your project, you'll then go, and the very last step is using that project manual feature to combine. So again, that's your project manual feature. I have a few more tips for you here. We're going to go ahead and jump back. This is another finalization tip here. One thing that some people don't realize you can do in the online service is allow for digital signatures. Now keep in mind you need to have your own third-party digital signing software, whatever that may be. There are a lot out there. But I'm going to show you exactly how you can finalize a document and incorporate a digital signature placeholder at the end of your finalized documents. So again, this is going to work in conjunction with a digital signing software. Adobe has one, maybe DocuSign. There are many different digital signing softwares, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can incorporate those. So again, we are right back to the online service here. And actually, where you're going to get started if you want to finalize a document with a digital signature placeholder is in your settings. So I'm going to go to my settings up at the top here. If you haven't yet, I recommend taking a look at your settings, especially this document subtab where there are so many different options here. You may be able to save yourself some time by setting your preferences. But I'm just going to point out this include digital signatures placeholders line. By default, it's set to never. However, you can change that. You can opt for it to ask each time you finalize a document if you want written or digital signatures, or you can just always opt for that digital signature placeholder. I'm going to say ask each time, and let's go ahead and finalize a document to see exactly what that looks like. So I've pressed OK, I've saved my settings. Let's go ahead, go back to the Projects tab and finalize a document. So let's say I want to finalize a draft that I may already have in my Falls Road project. Just a quick note here, when you're in the Projects tab and you're looking at this Recent Documents preview, that is just that. The Recent Documents is just a preview here. If you ever want to perform any actions or finalize any of these documents, you want to make sure you're clicking this View All Documents button all the way at the bottom right to get to this document management window, as I call it. So let's go ahead and press View All Documents, and let's pick out a draft that I may have already uploaded or created for this project, again, just for demonstration purposes. So let's say I want to finalize this A101 draft with a digital signature because remember, I just adjusted my settings. I'm going to click Finalize over here on the right. And because I opted to ask each time, it's going to ask me if I want a written signature or a digital signature. Written is just going to be standard. It's just going to include a signing line. That's your default. But let's say I want a digital signature. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And that's going to generate, a final document that's going to include a digital signature placeholder. So let's open this up. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom here because that's where my signatory page is going to be. That's my additions and deletions report. There we go. All right, so the last page of my agreement is going to be my signatory page. Instead of having a blank signing line, it's going to say, see attached digital signatures page. And there's my digital signatures page. Now, I do not have a third-party digital signing software installed on this computer, so my digital signatures page is going to be blank. That just reiterates the fact that you do have to have a third-party digital signing software, and that's going to include signing blocks here in which your parties can sign. So if you prefer to use digital signatures, or if you have a client or PM that prefers to use digital signatures, then a great place to get started to allow for those signatures is again in your settings. All right, I have about one more tip to show you before we hop into the Q&A section with Ariel at the end here. I'm seeing questions fill in, so that is all good. We are collecting those. Please continue to enter your questions as we go along here. So I'm going to hop back into our presentation. The last thing I'm going to go over again before we break for Q&A is that we have a lot of resources for you to get help. So anytime you're having trouble or just need a refresher using the online service, a great place to get started is the help section. You can also sign up for additional training from the help section or from our Learn tab. So let's go ahead and jump into the online service, click on that help tab and see where it takes us. So up at the top here, we went over all of these main tabs except for help, which we're going to go through now. So once I click on that, it's going to take me to our help section here. I'm going to focus mostly on the online service section because, of course, this is a webinar on using the online service. But we also have documents, any resources for documents. You can search for specific ones or purchasing questions as well. A great place to get started if you just want general directions or a quick refresher on the online service is this beginner's guide to using the online service. When I click on that, that's going to give me one centralized resource that's going to include basic functionality in the online service, and it's going to include written instructions and then often a short, just 1-minute tutorial video that again is just a great refresher. For basic things like creating a project or editing document drafts. Again, this is in our help section. I mentioned at the very beginning, if you want to take a step back to the basics and really get into detail on that basic workflow and navigation of the online service, then you can certainly sign up for a basics training. We offer those weekly, and that's just an hour, a separate hour on going over all of the basic principles in the online service. And then beyond that, there's going to be several other more in-depth instructions, whatever may apply to whatever you're looking for, and you can also search around. For example, if you're completing payment applications and change orders in the online service, we have, again, written instructions on doing that, and you can also sign up for live training for that as well. We offer monthly training on completing payment applications and change orders using that online editor in the online service. And then finally, if you're looking for more general resources, you can also go to our Learn tab. And that's going to incorporate, again, any additional trainings we have. These can also be upcoming and on-demand webinars on working on contract documents in general. We recently released a series of resources on how the COVID-19 pandemic can be affected or addressed in AIA Contract Documents. And then let's say you have a specific technical question or a question about your project and how it relates to AIA Contract Documents. A great place to go is the Support tab up at the top here, this Contact Us section. AIA Contract Documents has 2 different support teams based on what questions you may want to ask. So this first team is our technical support team. This is the team that's helped run by Ariel, who we're going to talk to in just a little bit. And they're going to provide any assistance on any online service issues. You can reach them by phone or email. And if you have any questions about document content, we also have a support line for that as well, which you can reach for by phone or email. Both of these teams are free to get in touch with. They are both incredibly helpful and a great resource. So I, as a trainer, often recommend using these teams as a resource for any specific questions that you have. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and move into the questions section, or the questions portion for the last 20 minutes or so. Again, I'm seeing some questions come in here. I'm going to read these to Ariel. Ariel, do we have you on the line?
Hi, Sarah. I'm here.
Hi, Ariel. All right, let's get started with some of these questions. So I see one question coming in that says, sometimes in the back and forth of edits between the parties, someone will change a project team and/or project team member. Is there a way to carry those changes within the Word document back into the Projects tab?
So that feature is not available to synchronize that. The changes to the project team in a document will not override what's in your project data's team members. Um, for now, you would need to add or remove the new team members by editing your project data.
All right, thank you. This next question here is, can you see the PDF documents or attachments in the preview settings before you finalize?
Um, what I suggest is before you finalize, if you want to take a look at it first, how it's going to look like, you can use the check variance feature. So I
Yeah, I
think
can go in here,
you can
Ariel,
show
and
them.
yeah. So again, when you're in the Projects tab and you want to preview what a variance check document's going to look like, you can go in here, and again, I mentioned clicking View All Documents to get to that document management window. So I've clicked View All Documents. Again, we're in the Projects tab here. And then any drafts you have, again, this is before you finalize, you can go to this Actions section over here on the right. Let's take a look at this. Again, draft A101. It's kind of in our guinea pig. Going to go to these dots here, and I'm going to click Check Variances. That's going to give me, I'm going to choose a variance markup format. Again, clean means your variances to that standard AIA language are marked at the end. Comparative means throughout. And what that's going to do is produce a variance checked draft, I should say. So that's going to give me this kind of halfway document. It's still technically a draft, but it's kind of in between a draft and a final here. And that's going to let me preview the variance check and how that's going to look in my final document. So it's going to be more formatted here, and it's going to have any variances. So you see these are additions, are going to be underlined, and deletions are going to be stricken through. So that again is the check variances feature. And as Ariel was saying, that is a great way to kind of preview your documents before you finalize.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. All right, I see another question here. It says, does AIA integrate with DocuSign? I combine all of my PDFs there, but this is incredibly helpful to know how to do it here since we typically have so many exhibits. That, of course, is referencing the project manual feature.
So currently we don't have an integration with DocuSign. Um, what I would suggest is use the project manual first to combine all your documents, your exhibits, and then you can use DocuSign to upload your document. And I believe there you could specifically place a signature in the areas that you'd like in DocuSign. But as of the moment, we don't have an integration just yet.
Thank you, Ariel. Next question is, for contracts with digital signatures, is there a way to combine documents and still have the digital signature field editable?
Not at the moment. So when you use the project manual, those digital signatures are not going to be enabled to be edited. What you can do is finalize your documents first and then do your signatures and then use the project manual to combine them together.
Thank you, Ariel. Next question is, once a project manual is created, can a page or pages be extracted?
You will not be able to extract a page from the project manual. Our documents is they're locked, so there's no way to uh, take out any of those pages from the project manual. But what you can do is reproduce another project manual. So the documents that you upload to our service, those PDF documents are going to be there, so you can recreate another project manual again.
And then kind of going off that, I see a question here that says, why are the final contract documents locked?
It's to secure the document, the integrity of it, to make sure it's not tampered with. So that's part of our process of locking the documents.
Thank you. Next question is, how do you save a template created under an AIA license for 1 year for the next year when the renewal occurs? Do you want me to repeat that one?
Yeah, can you repeat that question one more time?
Sure. So it says, how do you save a template created under an AIA license for 1 year, so a 1 year license? How do you save that for the next year when you renew?
Okay, so you can save the document that you create, like a draft document. You can save it locally on your computer. So let's say, you're not going to need our software for, for a while. You can keep that draft document, and then, you can upload it back when you need to use our service, and then you can reuse that document, repurpose it. There's also a way in the application that you can upload it to be your custom template if you want to do that. Um, Sarah, if you can point them out to the template library,
Sure, of course.
and there's a way for you to upload that Word document into the service so you can continue to use that.
Yeah, so anytime you want to hold on to a custom template, you can always save that Word document, kind of like we mentioned earlier, to your computer. And then, like we talked about, just use that import template feature at any time, and you can pull from any Word document that's saved onto your computer. So once you create that draft custom template, that stays on a Word document on your computer until you use this import template button to later import it.
And what's good about this feature is doing it this way is that you'll be able to reuse this with your other projects. So let's say you upload this custom template here, and then you create another project. What it'll do is it'll populate the fields that are in your project data to your custom template. So that's what's good about it.
Right, so when you press Create Document, we demonstrated it on a different project, but you can use this custom template using this tab here for any projects in the future. And remember, we discussed earlier how creating drafts in the Projects tab helps populate those contact details. So if I created this document for a different project than what we saw earlier, then the project team details and the project details that are applicable to this project would populate. All right, well, thank you very much, Ariel. I'm not seeing any new questions come in. I think we are able to hit them all. We'll just pause for a minute here, see if there are any last minute questions that come through. And if not, then we'll wrap up a little early here. So if you have any additional questions, go ahead and put those through now. All right, so I'm still not seeing any additional questions. I'm glad we were able to get to them all. What I will leave you on here are these contacts and resources. Remember, you will receive a follow-up email with the recording of today's presentation and the slides. It'll also include that feedback survey that we would love if you would fill out. But if you have any questions that came up today that you didn't get a chance to get to, I'm actually getting some additional questions coming in. So we'll revisit those in just a second here. But remember that you always have the content support team and the technical support team. But Ariel, don't hang up yet. I am seeing some more come through. One question is, what's the best way to finalize a contract when an exhibit also needs to be included and finalized?
Okay, so it depends on if the exhibit is it's your own exhibit that you wish to attach to your document. I would convert the exhibit to a PDF first, and then finalize your contract, and then you can use a project manual to combine them together. Now, if the exhibit is an AIA contract documents, you would need to finalize that along with your agreement, and then you can use a project manual.
Thank you, Ariel. Yeah, so remember, anytime you want to combine documents, combining them is the last step. You want to finalize everything first. Anything that's not a finalized document, any PDFs you made yourself, use this import file button in the projects tab to get those into your project as well. And then combining them via project manual is the best step. So then I see one more question coming through here that is a quick clarification to the previous question, which I believe when we were talking about the check variances feature. When your document is in draft form, can you see the attachments you want to add in the draft form?
Um, so the I guess a question, a follow-up question to this one. So the document is in the draft form, but you have an attachment inside your document. Could you clarify the attachment? Is this an email attachment or an exhibit at the end?
Yeah, why you may be a PDF exhibit is the clarification.
Can you see the attachments you want to add to the form? So I think going back to what we mentioned is that you would take a look at your draft document using the variance checker to see it, and then the PDF exhibit, that would be a separate exhibit that you probably have that you can open up um, and take a look at it before you use the project manual feature to combine them together. So if I'm missing anything, if you can clarify, or um, in fact, I mean, we can follow up with you offline on this question.
Yeah, absolutely. If we need to provide any additional clarification, if you do have a PDF exhibit that you want to add onto the end of your document, that would have to be done after you finalize. But if you're referring to the asker of this question, if you are referring to a different process, then we can certainly follow up with you offline after the webinar. The next question I'm getting through here is, can you still get access to your custom template if you only write contracts one at a time without a yearly membership?
So in order to have access to your custom template, if they're online, you would need to have your membership active. However, you can download a copy of your custom template offline, and you should have access to it until you need to use the service again. Then you can upload them back in.
Thank you, Ariel. Next is, can an attachment be added within a document and not just at the beginning or end?
You, if you're referring to within the contract and changing the place, you won't be able to do that in the within the like contract. However, if you're attaching different PDFs, you'd be able to place the PDFs in different order.
Right, so when you're using the project manual feature, assuming you have PDF attachments to a finalized document, then you can't insert that inside a finalized document. You can only do that at the beginning and end. If you want to insert something in the middle of the document, that has to be done in the draft stage to follow up on Ariel's answer there. And then I think that's going to conclude our second wave of questions here, unless I don't see any coming through. I'm seeing, I think, one or two more questions come through here. I see one question here that says, is there a problem with doing everything in Word and then saving on PDF?
So to edit documents, you would do it in Word, and then when you say save on PDF, um, do you mean to generate a file, or do you mean to just print it to a PDF? Because if you just print a draft Word document to a PDF, it'll still have your draft watermark.
Yeah, so I see a follow-up that says I would import the Word doc and as a final. So yes, the best process there, to, again, go off what Ariel was answering there, is to do everything on Word, which is great, and then using that import file to import it and then finalize into a PDF in the online service. But yeah, all the editing is best done in Word. All right, well, thank you very much, Ariel, for your time. Again, everyone will receive a follow-up email from AIA Contract Documents that's going to include the slides from today, the recording from today, and a feedback survey. Thank you very much, everyone who attended today. I hope even the more experienced members here were able to learn something new. And remember that we have our technical support team for any questions that are lingering beyond today. Thank you very much. Bye, Ariel.
Bye, thank you.